Hi there, it's Lisa Sweeney here from Business in Heels, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Louisa Chu, who runs the away team. And she's got the most amazing business, and she's going to be talking to you in a minute. So let me just check in. Can everybody hear us? If you can hear us and you can see us fine, can you just hit the like button so that we know you're all online? Very cool. Louisa and I have been chatting for ages, and this is Louisa's first Facebook Live, so you've got to give us some grace with that. And we actually work with the away team. We love them to death. But what I'm going to do is introduce you to Louisa and let Louisa tell you a little bit about her business and how she helps other people. So, Louisa.
Hi. Thanks very much for having me. So what Away Team does is we match Filipino workers with Australian businesses. And we do it in a very unique manner in that we match one-on-one. So say you needed a VA, we'll find a VA that becomes your worker. And we do it so that all the Australian businesses have to do is give us as much information about the worker that they want, and then we do all the recruiting and all the hard work in the background. Then the Australian business will do the interviews, and then that worker becomes embedded in the Australian business. Yeah, and I'm really passionate about it because for two reasons. One is because you get a great worker who works really well for you, and the other is because the Filipino worker gets long-term sustainable employment, which is very important to me.
Yeah, and we are so lucky because we have got two great team members from Louisa's group, Leslie and Mitch, and they are just wonderful. And we had the best experience interviewing and engaging them. You know, you could ask for so many different criteria, and it was great. So that was just wonderful. And look, we were so impressed with Leslie because I had about 25 different programs she had to be across. And you found me like 5 people I could choose from. So that was great. So, Louisa, tell us a little bit about your journey, because you weren't always a real fan of online workers or outsourcing. So tell us a little bit about, your journey through this.
Yeah, sure. To say I wasn't a fan is probably minimising how against it I was. So what happened is my husband runs a web development firm, and he went on a trip with one of our main clients in that business to the Philippines because they were going to be outsourcing their call centre. And he came back and he was like, oh, I think we need to do this in Intellis. And so at the time we were sitting at the South Melbourne market, having breakfast, blah, 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 really lovely time, hadn't seen him for a month. And we had a stand-up argument in the middle of the South Melbourne market, as in yelling at each other. The waitress came to bring our coffee. This is how much we were yelling. The waitress came to bring our coffee and left again. She didn't even put her coffee down. So it was really terrible. And the reason we were arguing is because in my head, outsourcing as a word always equaled exploitation. So in my mind, whatever it was that we would be doing would be exploitative. And I have a community service background. So I've spent, before doing Away Team, 20 years in social work and community service. So I have this very strong social justice bent. And so I just couldn't understand how we could possibly do this thing without exploiting the people in the Philippines. And I had this word going round and round in my head. I had this word living wage, and that it must be equal to an Australian wage, and blah, 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 blah. So we had this argument, which ended up with me storming off and not talking to Matt for 24 hours, which, if you know me, is very difficult for me to not talk to somebody for 24 hours. It takes effort.
Yeah, I get that.
But slowly over time, I came to, okay, so if we're going to do this thing, I need to make sure that we're going to do it properly. And we talked about, I started to research what, how much you needed to live if you were in the Philippines, and what Filipino labour law was like. And I got less negative. I was still a bit, and then we employed our first worker, who is still with us. So 5 years ago, we employed Isabel, who manages all our finances across both businesses. She is incredible. I don't know what I would do if she went away. because she now pays all our bills, does everything. So it would be a nightmare if she suddenly wasn't around. And then put on a couple of web developers for Intellis. And then in October, I'm trying to think, 2013, I think, Matt had a company conference and he said, why don't you come? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, I still think it mightn't be okay. And then he's like, tropical island, it's warm.
So you went.
Yes, so I went. And I met Isabel. And it was Isabel's story that changed my mind. So her story is that the day before we employed her, she had the equivalent of about 20 Australian dollars in her bank account. Her husband had just been fired from his job. She had a little 6-month-old baby, and she was filling in paperwork to become an OFW, so an overseas worker, which essentially meant she would have to leave George, her 6-month-old, at home and go and work in Dubai or Hong Kong or one of those places as a home help. And she would be leaving George and her husband forever. And since then, I've discovered that there are 3,500 Filipino women that do that a day, and that they often leave forever and they never come home. And we're also seeing in the Philippines now this real sociological effect of young people growing up without mums. And so I met her and she said to me, you employing me has changed my life. I would not be here with my child if you didn't. And then, so 5 years on, she went to a trip with George, who's now 6, and her husband and her other little girl to Hong Kong for George's 6th birthday. And she wrote Matthew and I the most beautiful letter that made me cry, just thanking us for her employment and saying that without us employing her, she never would have dreamed she would have got on a plane, let alone go to another country. So it's that level of, when you give somebody long-term sustainable employment, you actually do change their lives. And that's not, I'm not meaning that in a condescending way, you really do. And there are many, many stories that I could tell you like that across our team. So, and now, but you have to do it properly. You have to do it properly. You have to use a company like ours, which ensures payment, and our minimum wage is double the legal minimum wage in the Philippines. So, all our workers are paid well.
And there's also backups for a lot of those workers too, in that they get to be able to take sick leave and holidays, so it's done in a way that you can be quite comfortable in it. And we had similar, anxiety when we first talked about it, and yet, we all felt by, Joe and I felt by working with you that actually, that minimum standards were well and truly met, and that we, had done our bit to de-risk that idea of exploitation, because it's a real concern for most people. Louisa, how are you making a difference?
So we're making a difference in a number of ways. The first way, of course, is long-term sustainable employment. So we only employ workers full-time. We don't employ them part-time. We don't employ them based on contract. So they know that when they're employed with us, they are only working for us and the Australian client. We're really only working for the Australian client. We guarantee payment. So even if our Australian clients are a bit late in transferring the money to us, we guarantee that they'll be paid on time weekly. And like you were saying, we also make sure that they get all of their benefits. So as Filipino labour law is quite strong if you follow it. Not many outsourcing companies do. In fact, I believe we're the only company that does this model in Australia.
Great.
So, they get sick leave, maternity leave, they get a form of health benefit, which is a bit like Medicare. They get the ability to apply for housing loans, which they don't get if they're just working randomly. And so, that all makes them feel very secure, which has a benefit for the Australian company because they know they're getting a worker that's happy, that wants to be at work, that is grateful to be employed. So it has a benefit to the Australian company also.
So, Louisa, if I had a person already from the Philippines and I was concerned that they were being either underpaid or not, I can actually bring them to you and you can take on the management of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done that a couple of times. We have taken on somebody else's worker who was they were just employing them individually or through somewhere like Upwork, and we have taken on that. And the other thing is that there's no fuss for the Australian company. So as you know, Lisa, you pay us in Australian dollars into an Australian bank account, and then we do all the transferring. So, you know, and I think also the other thing that we help small Australian businesses to grow. So I know that before Matt started out outsourcing himself, we never had a holiday without his phone ringing. It used to drive me bananas. We'd go away for a family holiday for a week, and he would spend half of that week on the phone doing stuff, driving me nuts. And the kids would be going mental because we couldn't have a holiday. We don't do that anymore because we have a whole team behind us that take phone calls, that answer emails. So I think as a small business owner, to be able to know that your business is continuing to grow if you're doing, you know, actually looking after yourself, I think that's a real advantage. So not only are we helping Filipino workers, but we're also scaffolding Australian businesses.
Oh, and this is the key thing. So many businesses tip over because people won't give up the admin stuff that they're not great at. You know, or they're not getting out to make sales or getting new clients because they're stuck behind a desk answering emails or banging out invoices or balancing a book sheet. And so how many people that are listening to this feel like that? Because if you are, you need to reconsider what your options are, you know, and get smarter. Or maybe it even, you know, we've got somebody who helps me with marketing, and you know, you can get some really highly skilled people. So
yeah, that's right. For me, the biggest thing for me was to admit I'm not good at stuff. I think as women, sometimes we think that we have to be super women, good at everything and blah, blah, blah. And actually my husband and I are both really, really bad at managing finances. We're just bad at it, and we always have been bad at it. But to give that part of our business over to someone else was such a step of, I should be able to be good at this and maybe I'll just try. And eventually we got over ourselves, gave it all to Isabel. Our BAS statements are on time. She says no to us when we want to spend money on things we shouldn't. You know, we just don't have that stress anymore because she takes it on. I mean, she now has that stress, the poor love, but it just is such a relief to have somebody else managing it, something that you're really not good at. And as a woman, it's okay. It's okay to go, actually, not good at that. Here, you do it. And then I get to have fun by doing things like this, which I love. I love talking to people. I love talking to clients. So that's my skill set. Being behind a computer doing admin, hate it, didn't do it, ignored it, you know, that stuff.
So now, Louisa, tell us a little bit about how you're making a difference actually in the Philippines, because, you know, you are really passionate about helping other people, and there's some stories I think you should share.
Yeah, so as I said before, 20 years in community service, I can't help myself. I have to be also not only being in business, but also doing some other stuff. So we have done a couple of things and have plans, big plans for things. So some things we've already done is last year in the city that we live in, which is Cagayan de Oro, which is in Mindanao. So Manila's up here and Mindanao's down here. It's one of another island. And they had a massive flood in Cagayan just at Christmas time, and almost 7,000 people had to be removed from their homes because their homes flooded. Because Cagayan goes like that, so there's up town where we live, and then there's this huge valley, and the drains aren't very good, and so it floods very quickly. So 7,000 people out of their homes, and we partnered. And I was in Australia going, I just want to get back there and help. But anyway, so I couldn't. But what we did do was partner with a local cafe that shut their doors for 2 weeks and fed people. So what we did was provide them money in order to for them to do that. And so I think Ruben said that we fed about 5,500 people across that week. And that just was awesome. And it really didn't cost us very much because food is so cheap over there. So we've done that. We've actually done that a couple of times. So I don't know if people are aware, but there's a bit of, there's an uprising that's kind of attached to ISIS and terrorism right down the southern end of Mindanao, in a town called Milwari. And it's being very well contained, but it's ongoing and probably will be ongoing for some time. So most of the residents of Milwari have had to move out. And so they've come to Iligan and Cagayan, which is where we live. And so there are refugees which need feeding. So again, we partnered with Panadolce and a local community group called Duterte's Kitchen to provide finances around feeding. I also got to volunteer one day because I was there. So that was really nice. Got to go and hang out with people, and I chopped 2.5 kilos of ginger that day. And what I didn't know is ginger makes your hands really hot. So I felt like I'd rubbed deep heat into my hands. I'm like, oh, that's... But it was really nice to talk with them and see the really good things that we were doing. We have a co-working space also in Cagayan. So what we did was anybody who could prove that they were from Milwari and were an online worker got a membership and has free access for the period of time that Milwari crisis goes on. So it doesn't matter if that's another month or another 2 years, they can come to the space which has air conditioning, high-speed internet, tea and coffee. They can come there and they can work for free.
Yep.
And then my most exciting thing that we're doing at the moment is my daughter is tutored by a Filipino tutor. So Tilly does online school, and she has a Filipino tutor that is there every day, because if I was to teach her, she wouldn't be learning anything. There would be shouting. So we employed somebody else, again, me admitting I'm not good at everything. And Imelda left us for a period of 12 weeks to do a maternity leave position in a very poor school right up in the hills in an area called Bukidnon. And we went to visit, and it was awesome. But I did notice that the school didn't have as many resources as it needed. So I asked Imelda, what is the thing that this school needs the most? And she came back to me within a week and she said there are 120 students that have nothing to eat before they come to school. So I said to her, all right, we'll go back to the school and ask them how much it would cost in order to feed the 120 students 2 meals a day. And she came back 2 weeks ago and said 75 Australian dollars a week.
Wow.
And I said, are you sure? She said, yes, I'm sure. And so we're doing that. We're starting next Monday. So as of next Monday, those students will receive breakfast and lunch. And I'm so excited about that. And that is the first part of the journey. Yeah, I'm really excited because you can't learn if you're hungry.
You can't.
No, you can't. And that's the first part of our journey. So eventually what we want to do is have support around school all the way through to online work. I don't know what that looks like yet, but that's the first part is having kids come to school and be able to learn. So yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's excellent. And look, I think Louisa is such a great example of what is the value-driven businesses that are being created today. And for any of you that are thinking about outsourcing and just want to explore it, I put a link onto this video so you can just log on and you can have a chat with Louisa for an hour and explore what it might look like for your business. But yes, you're doing amazing things, and I think all of us that have been, considering, getting online workers, getting help, ultimately we need to grow our businesses, and I think the Away Change is such an awesome solution. So thanks so much for joining me on this. It's been great. Great to hear and tell your stories.